All right, here we are, and we are live, and welcoming our two guests, Matt Bowden and Andrew Johnson, to What the
G'day.
COVID is Going On, episode 2. How you going, guys?
Very well, thank you.
So we ran a very spontaneous pilot episode about a month ago. We just decided we had a chat with someone and decided there's a lot of censorship going on in the media and not a lot of conversations. Apparently, it's almost like a taboo subject now, and so we like to talk, and we thought we would start a talk show. You guys can't see this, but what we do is we have a banner scrolling saying that everything conveyed in this show is just mere opinion and not to be deemed as fact. So there's no need to fact check the show.
And also, we're wanting people to know it's non-judgmental, it's non-biased, and really sort of a show about what people are feeling during this COVID time, because everyone's on a different journey and having a different experience. Every week we just want to have a chat with people.
So a bit of a quick lowdown of where what's been going on, because we don't really hugely follow the news, and we don't really advocate that either. A tutu here and there in the news, but I think people can get really addicted to watching the news and really buy into the fear of this whole situation. And if you actually kind of unplug, you realize, well, in your own home where you're possibly locked down, we certainly are, it's life isn't actually that bad, or isn't even that different. I find if you spend too much time hooked into that, nevertheless, it's quite fascinating doing a bit of a scan of what's been going on. And currently, latest in the news is that the government's passed a really quick overnight bill that should see very soon 40% of our workforce being mandated vaccines. Fortunately, our area has already been mandated, so we no longer have to wait to see if we're going to get in line. But they're really ramping it up. We've lost teachers, we've lost police, we've lost ambulance officers, we've lost health workers, we've lost prison wardens, we've lost, obviously, with frontline workers. Have I missed any out? Do you guys recall? We left anyone out that hasn't lost their jobs? Retail, hospitality and events is our industry. Basically in our country, if you're listening from around the world, we have a really high vaccination rate, but they're really wanting like everyone to get vaccinated. And so they're pushing all these industries to have a vaccination, and they've basically passed a bill that says, okay, these areas in our society need to now use this vaccination pass and require vaccination. And if you work in one of those industries, then you also have to have vaccination. We've also had fortnightly protests going on around our country, which is kind of cool, I think. It's just seeing the people starting to stand up and go, what, we've overall been a pretty compliant country. We've worked together. I wouldn't call ourselves a team of 5 million anymore. Would you guys call us a team of 5 million anymore? No, I'd say we're starting to come into like a real like the word apartheid keeps coming up. And I personally, dare I say this, but I'm going to spell it out because I keep getting banned from Facebook for it, but I'm starting to feel some analogies to what went on in Nazi Germany, where we've just had our leader just slowly change the rules, and now we find ourselves in a very different society. All around the world, Rome, I did have videos, but unfortunately couldn't deliver them to this broadcast, but all around the world we've seen massive protests in Rome, in Australia. America's always protesting. And here's an interesting one. Scott Morrison, ScoMo, the Prime Minister of Australia, he's even put a video out. In their country, they're really getting intense, but it seems only at their state government level. And so we're seeing the federal government or the Prime Minister of the federal government saying, no, Australia's done enough with the vaccinations. We've got a lot of vaccinations. It's time for freedom. Stop with these mandates. So that's a bit interesting to watch. We've had some nurse whistleblowers in Australia and New Zealand come out saying that we're getting lots and lots of side effects, particularly cardiac side effects in the hospitals from the vaccines, and cancers are starting to show up, which we'll do a whole episode on that, because there's some very interesting science. I've seen not one but two mechanisms now by which we have to watch these cancer safety signals.
I've also seen a whole bunch of people, like sports people around the world, just keeling over on
dropping like flies.
Yeah,
oh, actually, like that's one
on the football pitch, on cricket pitches, on television. It's quite alarming.
And the bus driver, I read in the stuff, a bus driver dropped, like the bus kind of just veered off and crashed, and they put the bus driver down to medical emergency. And now we don't know. It's just, you're reading this, but it does remind me. Did you hear about the Delta Airlines? They had to do an emergency landing as well once they got once they mandated all the vaccines for the pilots. So I sit there and I'm kind of like, oh, we're starting to see these things happen over and over again, and we cannot say they're due to the vaccine. But when you're seeing a pattern and you're seeing all the censorship around side effects, I don't know. I just, I'm not buying it. Like I think there's side effects going on and they're being censored. So that's really sad, because I've got lots of loved ones with the vaccine, and I'm scared to take the vaccine. I'm fully vaccinated, but with my condition, I think I'm just at too much risk. So as a result, we sit here as soon to be second grade citizens. In our country, if you're choosing not to vaccinate, you are choosing a life of severe lockdown. We can't go to a hairdresser. Thank God we wear wigs.
Yeah, I have to today.
I can't go to the gym anymore. I can't do lots. And I get why a lot of people, even those who want to take the vaccine, who didn't want to take the vaccine, are now going to take the vaccine. And it does make me wonder, I think the vaccination should be really about you're taking it because you think you need to for your health. Like Andrew, for example, today is one of those people. And it should be a personal situation that you discuss with your doctor, not because you're going to face all these, not because you need to go to a hairdresser or because you want to go to an event like in our country. So that's a quick rundown. And we're sitting at we're kind of plateauing around 200 to 250 average cases a day now as COVID moves in. Does anyone else have any kind of current affairs? Obviously, I'm looking I'm coming from I don't want to call it vaccine hesitant stance, because I'm not vaccine hesitant. I don't want to take that vaccine. I'm open to other vaccines still, maybe. But for my condition, I don't want to take that vaccine. But Andrew, do you have any, because I'm obviously going to bring a perspective that's different, but do you have any as a double vaxxed person, or are you triple vaxxed yet?
I will be in about 2 weeks. Yeah.
Cool. So do you want to share what you've seen around going on lately, just to make sure we kind of bring a nice balanced perspective?
And I would also like to know, as knowing yourself having been vaxxed, do you feel are you given any indication of side effects? Like you go and get your Panadols and your antibiotics and it's like, don't take with alcohol, don't do this, and this. I'm curious to know, did you get any of these kind of...
Can we do that afterwards? Can we finish the wrap up of that and then hold that thought? And I would love to know that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so which question do you want me to answer?
Yeah. Can we start with mine? And just to round up, so that at the start we what I want to get out of these shows is, if we're going to do them weekly, we're going to get an idea of what it's like to live in our COVID world, and particularly what news jumped out for you in the week in particular, or at the moment. And then Matt, if you've got anything, we'll ask you afterwards, and Gemma, and then we'll go back to Andrew and ask him what it's like with his vaccinations.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, my mother's a nurse, has been a nurse her whole life, basically, and my friends are doctors and stuff like that. So I talked to them about that, and having had a long kind of interaction with the medical industry, because I got encephalitis when I was 15, so that's like meningitis, but it attacks your whole brain, and almost died. And then got vasculitis, Henoch-Schlein purpura, and when I was 27, so 2007. So I'm sort of used to medical things and being amongst the medical kind of community. So I wanted to do my research on, what does it actually mean for me? And ultimately, because my body had been so used to actually dealing with viruses, I didn't necessarily need to take the vaccine because my body was used to recognizing different types of, proteins, and especially with COVID being the spike protein being the thing that the vaccination deals with. So I did all my research, and then my biggest thing about when I spoke with the Herald was to do with, if people want to make the choice, the hesitancy to do so. It was very, very difficult to do it. And, I run my own business. I work from home. I can spend 2 hours on a phone call waiting on hold. Other people cannot. They're working night shifts. They've got 7 kids in the house. It's, all that kind of stuff. So my reason that, and I didn't actually reach out to the Herald, they reached out to me. But when I went to get my vaccination, I found it fascinating that they put it in the Crown Plaza, which was a, MIQ facility. And for those people who know the Crown Plaza in Auckland, it has a drive-through area that they had blocked off to make the exercise area. So you had to get pushed against the fence where everyone's walking in circles like zombies to get into the atrium on Elliot, which is it describes as an atrium of like 6 stories down to a food court. So here I am watching people talk to people coming from Melbourne through the fence. There's a meter gap between the 2 fences, but you still have to walk right next to it, in and out of the offices, and then getting on the train and coming out to Avondale when they get home, getting their sushi during the day, while an elderly lady is in front of me going through to get her vaccination. So my concern was, to your question, Gemma, they literally shoved me in and shoved me out. There was a pamphlet, I suppose you'd call it, that sort of said, if you feel your arm will be achy, if you feel, drink lots of water, take, Panadol. That was basically what they told you to do. There wasn't anything about the actual side effects of the medication. And I couldn't get that prior or after that. I also received 7 follow-up booking appointments text through to me, which I actually called back Healthline and said, I was just there today. I've already got my second one, but they kept texting me. So they booked up the system with all my appointments. And so unless I had called, they would have thought I'm turning out. So they would have taken the vials out, got them ready, and wasted them. So to me, the key thing comes back to something that Aston was just talking about with the legislation stuff, is that it's really coming down to the planning of the system, because what's happened in the last 72 hours with trying to push this bill through doesn't just impact the medical or secondary citizenship, like Aston refers to it, but it is human rights stuff. It is coming into a very dangerous criteria where the government, in my opinion, has become very selfish and very dictatorship, because they'll just do what they want because they've got the majority in the House, so they don't need support from any other party. And unfortunately, ultimately, if we had a more resourced medical system, which we've had almost 21 months now to realize that we needed to improve this, there's only 535 ventilators in the entire country. There's only 176 ICU beds and only 100 staff who are actually trained to deal with it. Now, if you said, look, we were going to do this elimination strategy. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go into this other thing about just letting it spread amongst the community. And, it would be a fairer way if the medical system was set up properly. But unfortunately, it's the emperor's got, new clothes sort of thing, that they're disguising the fact that they're not resourcing our hospitals and our nurses And I think that's what's been interesting about COVID with the social aspect of being isolated, is people realize how important teachers are, how much they take care of our kids, and how important nurses are, and our ambulances are a charity. We don't even fund our ambulances. Like, people are just starting to come to terms with things that I think I've been aware of for a long time. But it's highlighting some disparities, especially when the fact that our government said to be kind and to look after the most vulnerable. And I'm a white male, no kids. I'm a divorcee. I've done all the things, paid my taxes, done all the things you're supposed to do when you get to 40, almost 42. And so I don't matter to the government, but there are people that voted the government in that they have just literally left alone. And that, to me, I think is the biggest issue I have. And that was why I wanted to talk with the Herald, because if I'd been at that time, you have to remember back in June, there was only 4 places in Auckland that you could get vaccinated. And, one in the North Shore, one in the Central City, one at the Manarewa Marae, and one in Mount Wellington, which ironically, the Manarewa Marae is run by Brian Tamaki. So that's an interesting point. But yeah. Go down. But anyway, so the point is that if I'd had to catch a bus from, Papakura or Mangere to get to somewhere, and what I saw when I walked in was this made me feel very threatened about going in and getting my vaccination. Now, I'd made that choice, but when I got there, even I felt like, why would I want to go in there? Like, that is just ridiculous. And of course, what I pointed out to them was they'd put up, if people have been to supermarkets, obviously, some just 4x2 with some plastic over the reception. And I can see people getting off the bus from Melbourne standing right in front of me. And I'm having to walk right there with this 2-meter gap above the reception desk because they hadn't done the whole thing. And just saying, we knew Delta was here in January and we knew it was coming this way. So my thing was, if the medical system had been better supported, we wouldn't need these lockdowns. We wouldn't need people
absolutely.
These conspiracy theories that are going on, and especially because, unfortunately, there's 3 groups of people: those who don't watch the 1 p.m. briefings, those who do watch the 1 p.m. briefings, and then those people that research online. And there's a majority of people that can't do any of those things, actually, and they do a little bit of here and there, so they get friends and family, and as you say, it's almost like a coercion thing. And unfortunately, because of the way it's becoming a joke now with the 1 p.m. briefing with Jessica Tova, Benedict, and Jason, and they're state-funded journalists who are, that TV station is run by medical companies who pay for the advertising. So there's going to be a skew on it. So for me, my experience has just been the government's gone a little bit too far with just the arrogant PR machine of Instagram and happiness and happy prime minister around the world, how great we are, without actually doing the mahi, doing the work to look after the people that now are absolutely at the most risk, and also won't be able to get information around natural immunity, ways to protect themselves. They're just going to get fed this thing of vaccinate. And as I say, I chose to get vaccinated, but I had that choice. Some people do not. Some people don't have any other options. So yeah, that was sort of where my journey started with that.
Cool. Did you so what about the 3rd booster? Are you finding that easy to get? Is it like, have you managed to get it on time within your
No. just as difficult.
So it hasn't gone easier. Wow.
Because I wanted to also understand with, they're saying that they're going to get the AstraZeneca one, and for the 3rd one as an option against Pfizer. So, but they don't know anything. So they've made an appointment for me, but can't tell me which one I'll be getting.
Whoa, really?
What?
And how do they know that the 2 might conflict and have an issue with each other?
That's exactly my question, because the alternative is a 1 dose, so it's like almost getting 3.5 doses, if you like, and I want to know what that means, because when I got my 2nd vaccine, I was sick for like 4 or 5 days. Now I know it's because the body's replicating the planning of getting the virus, but still I was like, I want to know what's going to be what happens. Am I going to be sick for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks? What is it?
Absolutely,
It's
because you need to plan if you need to take time off work, or if you've got kids and you need to, and you just get nothing. Just
No, they
wow.
don't. So, and the interesting thing was when I first rang Healthline to get the vaccination number, which is now public, was incredibly difficult. And even ringing both Healthline and the vaccination line, they didn't have any information. And still to this day, I don't think they actually know what they're talking about. Because to be fair to the girl who answered the phone, she sounded like she was 19. And I had to spell immunocompromised to her. And she's like, oh, what's that?
Oh gosh.
It's
Oh my God.
a term for a series of conditions. She had no idea what I was talking about. And then she sent me the email, and then I went to Healthline. Healthline said, no, that's not. It was just, it's so difficult, even if you go down that route, as opposed to with, unfortunately, some of the medical professions in the GPs, they also are funded a lot by pharmaceutical companies. So
That's why I went out of pharmacology. It was I in 2005 I was going to do a master's in that, and I was appalled at how much they get. I applied for a job as a drug rep, and we're literally selling. Like the job was to sell. If you prescribe this many of this particular type of antidepressant, you'll get a holiday to Queenstown. It's crazy.
So it's not saying that all GPs are corrupt, and a lot of them go into the profession for the right reasons. But ultimately, the business of medicine is more insipid than I think most people realize. And that's what COVID has really brought to the surface for most people who've never really thought about it. Never really, some people are like, never been to hospital. It's like, wow. So if you've had a different life and your family or friends are involved in the medical, fraternity, they do good work, but there definitely is a business in medicine. And that's something that has to be considered, especially if you look at what's happened with the ordering of this vaccine and why, if you actually do the research on what happened with the ordering system here, it's because Pfizer demanded more money and we said we would wait. So we got it cheaper. And that's now led to the fact that more people could have been vaccinated earlier this year. Some people could have been given wider advice, but the government decided to propaganda a certain position around stuff, and now slowly just changing down, elimination, now I'm going to live with it, traffic lights, and by the way, Andrew, when you have your event in February, you have to stand at the door and be the police officer and say, sorry, you can't come in if you're not vaccinated, because even if I wanted to, under the legislation that they rushed through at 11 o'clock on Monday night, second reading yesterday. And for those who don't have the opportunity like me, I watch the House every day when they're sitting and hear the actual politicians discussing it, not just relying on the reporting. And I am going to be legally responsible if I let someone into the Hollywood Theatre in February, if I haven't checked them, regardless of whether they're tested or vaccinated. If I haven't checked them, I'm legally responsible. And it's ridiculous because it's so unfair. They're just passing. I'm chucked under the bus by just doing the right thing, but it's how they're dealing with it.
And what's the repercussions of that? Is it
You get
fines
fined.
or?
Yeah, you get
I think
fined.
it's like $15,000.
Yeah. It's I think per person it's something like 5. So yeah.
Wow.
And Matt in the quiet corner. Have you
Not
got
wrong.
any? That's all right. No, I was just wondering, have you got any? What's your thoughts on this whole current situation?
Well, I guess so. My background is I'm obviously the guy that invented party pills, and so I've been managing a pharmaceutical company for nearly 20 years, designing drugs, patenting them, and arguing with the government about how safe is safe enough for a drug. So that's where my sort of understanding is. And I think that the people who are saying they don't want to get vaccinated because there's no long-term safety data on this drug, I noticed you look at the MedSafe website and it does tell you that there's no long-term safety data for this drug. And telling people that it's a vaccine doesn't kind of work. You can't really sort of borrow safety information from another drug when it acts so differently.
It's a gene therapy.
I don't know if I agree with that statement actually, but
No?
technically, but
I'm only
I don't-
quoting like I listen, so I my thing is I like listening to vaccinologists, and they all sit there and say you can't call it, not, I thought it was only the messenger RNA ones, but apparently they're saying you can't even call the Johnson and Johnson's one a vaccine.
Well, they're not. They've changed the definition for vaccine now, and if you have a look at the
Well,
way
it
back
fits it now, yeah.
website, you see that they've changed the back. But my issue is with the when it first came out, when COVID first came out, and we started hearing about what had happened in Wuhan. They said, well, there's this virus, and the virus is different to the others because of this S protein, the spike protein. And what we know about it is that it locks into certain receptor sites. And so drugs and receptors are a little bit like keys and keyholes. If something's a certain shape, it will activate. We know that that cannabis, for instance, has got THC, and that it locks into cannabis receptor sites in our body. Our body has normally got this thing called anandamide. It's a transmitter that flows around the body. That's the key that locks into the receptor sites, and it matches, but THC happens to be the same shape, so it locks into those receptor sites. And in the same way, this virus has got this protein, this spike protein they call it, which is the same shape as something called angiotensin.
Angiotensin.
Yeah, it locks into the ACE2 receptor site. And so that's how it gets in, and it activates things that angiotensin is supposed to activate, which is the consistency of our blood and to do with our blood pressure and stuff. And so then when people said, we're going to develop some vaccines that are going to help us to recognize the spike protein by flooding our body with spike proteins, what we know is from a pharmacology background, from a virologist says this is a great idea. Immunologists, primo idea, but a pharmacologist says, hey, wait a second, isn't that going to activate in the same way as the virus does and cause problems with sort of blood consistency and a heart and everything else? But it sort of went ahead anyway. And now the issues that we're seeing coming out, like the paper that just came out in circulation just a few days ago, talking about how we can now see that there's a mechanism for a lot of the heart issues that we're seeing coming out. So I think there's definitely issues going on with the safety of this Pfizer's Comirnaty drug. And so to me, I look at it and think, well, we also know that it does have some efficacy in particularly reducing the severity of the disease, and it sort of can make people safer in that respect. But for me, the question is, are there other things that we could have done other than using this particular sort of drug from this company? And given that it might be given there's issues filling ourselves up with spike proteins and exposing all of our organs and cells to the spike protein, which we know has got this dangerous antigen, this dangerous toxin on it, are there other ways that we could make ourselves stronger against the virus? And to me, if we have a look, we see that there are quite a few other things that we could do, but it seems that we're not really allowed to talk about them. We know that when the virus comes into your cells, in order to reproduce, it needs something to work on. And if you remember, back in the olden days before photocopiers, we used to have that carbon paper, that purple piece of paper.
Oh, that's right.
Remember that stuff? And you draw on your bit of paper and it makes a copy. It sort of presses through that carbon paper. Well, your cells are a little bit like that. They've got an enzyme, which is called reverse transcriptase. And when the virus's RNA comes into your cell, it presses against this reverse transcriptase and makes a copy, just like that carbon paper. Now, if you've got no reverse transcriptase in your cells, then the virus can't replicate. And the reverse transcriptase doesn't exist so well in cells that have got a high content of zinc. And so if you have enough zinc in your cells, then that kind of greatly reduces the ability of the virus to replicate. And you can get more zinc into your cells, not just by eating zinc pills, but you need to combine it with something to open the cells up. And ionophore is what it's called. And so, so there's more research could happen there. And then the other thing is that vitamin D. We know that vitamin D often helps with these things. And so research has been done to look at when people check into the hospital and they're sick with COVID, let's check all their bloods and see what the vitamin D levels were like. And we can see that there's a really strong correlation between having a low vitamin D level, VDD they call it, which is not the disease it sounds like.
Venereal disease.
And that's, if you've got less than 20 nanograms per mil of vitamin D in your blood, then you've got VDD. And so those people seem to be the ones that are ending up in serious problems in the hospital. When you've got people with higher levels of VDD, the people with higher levels of vitamin D in the blood don't sort of end up there. And so there's even been a paper published more recently in Nature magazine, which suggested that you could actually sort of map it down and almost predict that people with less than 20 end up in trouble with COVID. People that are that have got more than 20, between 20 and 40, sort of don't end up in very much in ICU with serious problems unless they've got some other comorbidity, and people with higher than 50 probably aren't going to die at all from COVID. And so when we see there's a correlation there, we don't have like the millions and millions and millions of people to study, but the data that we have got shows that there's a very strong correlation. So then if we start, so my idea is, why aren't we combining all of this data together? And I'd like to do a study looking at all other hospital data and say, okay, we know about zinc, we know about vitamin D. Let's throw just open in there and see what other correlating factors are there to be able to predict what we could do in our blood, other than taking the vaccine, to decrease our risk of catching the virus and to decrease our risk of transmitting it and decrease our risk of serious harm. And so what I'd like to do, and what I've started doing, is this project, the idea of validating your immunity. So if someone says, I don't need to take the vaccine, I'm not going to catch the virus because I don't know, eat a lot of cheesels or something. So that's, okay, very good. Let's test and see how strong that statement is to validate your immunity. And I think what should be looking at, rather than just looking at vaccine status as a measure of safety, because some people might have a vaccine certificate that maybe the vaccine didn't work so well on them, or maybe they had it a long time ago, maybe they don't have any antibodies. Why aren't we looking at antibodies instead? Why aren't we combining vaccination status and antibodies? That would be a better idea. How about this? My idea is this, that we take people and give them the opportunity to go and have a blood test. The blood test looks at your vaccination status, looks at whether you've got any antibodies or not, looks at your vitamin D levels, looks at the amount of zinc that you've got, and then we use an AI based on the data we've got from hospitals to predict what your immunity is and to predict what your chance of being infected is and what your chances of transmitting. And that would be, I think, a better measure if we're really trying to protect people, because vaccination status is not, I don't think it's the best measure that we've got. It's not the best, not the sharpest tool in the drawer for measuring people's safety. It only really measures their compliance with what this particular government told us to do.
Yeah, exactly. You can get, I know I when I got my rubella vaccination, I ended up with rubella, and not everyone builds immunity, and these are so new. They're just rampant speed, but the thing that really gets me is like you say, is the lack of alternative options for what we can do. Like, there's a ton of drugs out there, ivermectin, the famous horse paste, all around the world being used. The countries it's being used, their rates are dropping. The countries that are they haven't outright banned it, doctors all around are using it in the hospitals and things, and it's been really successful. Hydroxychloroquine, both of those, actually, if you look at those drugs, they are, if you look at the ivermectin, got a Nobel Prize for its contribution to human medicine, and both of those drugs have efficacy against HIV and SARS, I think it is. Even they're just amazing drugs. Why have they been taken off our shelves and banned from here? If our government really cared, why would it not be, let's get every approach, let's look at our nutrition, let's look at all the options. I know, actually, I did this fascinating thing, and I looked up all my drugs that I'm on. Well, I'm not on that many drugs, but my family are on. And my son's got asthma. His asthma inhaler buprednisone is a treatment for COVID. I'm on anti-inflammatories, I'm on, I take steroids for my neuropathy, and I'm on CBD. All of those help. And, I'm curious, if you're on medication, I would say look up and look through the science articles and see if it's effective in treating COVID. And why is our government pushing just one option and not everything, not to mention lifestyle?
But I think what's really interesting about what Matt's saying is, you should be on the Ministry of Health website, Matt, because nothing like what you just described for anybody just to make the choice. So when I talk about hesitancy about going into an MIQ hotel to get my vaccination, that's one thing, but it's also the access to it was so difficult, but also because I could contact people that I knew in the medical field, and they talked about very similar things, not exactly what you just said, Matt, but similar points. And that was the thing that fascinated me, is not on Healthline, not on the website, would you find any alternative to say, by the way, if you do not want to take the vaccination, here's what you should be talking to your GP about, or here's what you should understand. Here's some research. Here's a link to John Hopkins in America about how vitamin D and zinc is helping, those kind of things. That to me is what, again, this emperor new clothes thing, that we're just so forgiving of what the control that the government has taken over the information, and it's really, really scary. And this legislation that they've just done in this last 3 days is, I think, for me, the nail in the coffin. Whether you vote Labour or not, it's very dangerous, very, very dangerous, because they are, you know, blocking out people. And even with what's happening with the National Party today, because Judith is worried that Simon's going to take her job, and so she's now trying to kick him out for something he said 5 years ago. I mean, it's just an example of, you know, and I went through a 6-year legal battle with the government. And so I, through Discovery and Official Information Act stuff, saw the inside of how it works, and it scared the crap out of me. And I know that it hasn't changed. And especially now that we're dealing with people making choices, like you're saying, people taking stuff that could make them sick, you know, especially people that might have cardiovascular problems, because that is a big thing, especially blood clotting and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of people are not aware of because they may have been fine their whole lives. So if they don't have any alternative, they're going to have to make the choice because they want to go to a bar and have a beer with their friends. And I think that is really, I don't think New Zealanders are aware how dangerous that is.
And that's what worries me. Is it's really sad. I've had a couple of friends who, you know, rung me up crying, like, I had to go and get it today. Like, I didn't want to, but I work in entertainment, or I'm a teacher, or I
want to get married,
or, you know, one person I knew was like, oh, I don't want to miss out on my cruise, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and she's like, they feel coerced. And it's not a nice feeling that it's generating within us, and then this divide and the uncertainty and the confusion, and it's, you know, it's not a nice vibrational energy that they're putting out, and making it appear like everything's okay.
I know, and I think back to one of the other points that Matt made about, like, vitamin D, for example, isn't the metaphorical, ironical statement that will just lock us in our own houses. That's such, like,
and you need the vitamin D, yeah.
Stay inside your house. That's, you know, so you don't get any vitamin D. That's just, to me, sums up some of the way that we're not seeing what's really going on.
The other issue,
I put in an Official Information Act request, I think 1111, just asking the government for all the advice that they've been given about vitamin D and the correlation between vitamin D and COVID disease outcomes, and whether they were planning on announcing it to the public, whether there is a coordinated natural healthcare response coming, and whether now that vaccination uptake has reached saturation, or it's definitely on a par with the efficacy of the drug, and hesitancy is probably on a par with the side effects record. I think we've maybe reached our limit, and going any further is coercion. What is the next phase of education for the public on how to treat themselves and protect themselves? Because if you look at risk management as being like, often there's an analogy we use in risk management that it's like layers of Swiss cheese. You know, you've got one layer with a bunch of holes here, another layer with holes there, and you want as many layers as you can. The vaccine is commented by many people, it's called a leaky vaccine because it doesn't have very high efficacy. And so you need other layers as well. And so if you've had the vaccine, what can I do next? Next would be, you know, I suggest maybe to get your vitamin D into the right levels. Next would be, how about if we had some testing to see what is the right level for zinc? And the next level would be, how much vitamin C should we be taking? What are the other levels that we can be incorporating? And that education seems to be missing. So I've also asked, how do we engage with government to ensure that the messaging that we're putting out is kosher? And how should the natural health industry come together to make sure that they can get some messaging out there? Because the efficacy of natural health solutions is probably combined, it might even be on a par with the current Comirnaty drug, and you know, maybe it could be as helpful. You know what I mean? If the vaccine is the best tool in the drawer, let's have a look at the other tools now. You know,
that was also one of the questions that I wanted to ask Healthline was, so what happens after I get this third booster? Because you're all saying that the boosters should be done, but what else? What happens? When do I get the next one? Is it every year now?
6 months.
Yeah,
it's meant to be 6 months.
Yeah, so, but they didn't know. And then I was asking the same question, is there anything else I should be doing besides the fact now I'm vaccinated and I've got a little QR code on my phone. And exactly to Matt's point, they should be telling me that, okay, well, you need to be looking after yourself through these kind of vitamins. We've found research, there is research, but they're not going down that channel. And it'll get to March and April. So, 17th of January, we got some Kiwis coming from Australia. We got, in February coming from around the world, then everybody else on the 30th of April. So what do we do to make sure that for those people that are unvaccinated or those that have had their 2 shots or booster shots, what should I be taking to support my immunity? Because my immunity has been compromised by being exposed. Because I'm pretty certain that at least, in this particular part of Auckland, there's been so many cases, and every day, our supermarkets are 5 or 6 places of, so it's I've been around it. So, but my body's also been affected by the vaccine. So what can I do to support it moving on? I don't want to keep getting vaccinated every 3 months or every 6 months. So to Matt's point, what can I do? But at the moment, there's no information coming across at the 1 p.m. briefing available on Healthline or on a website. And that's something that I would say, if anybody working for the government or Ministry of Health watches this particular TV show, that is definitely something that if Matt can advocate that, I think it's an awesome idea, because it's just not available and most people don't know what their options are.
Well, let's watch this video. Let's have a look. Let's watch this video. And I think it's really exciting, and excuse me, there'll be a bit of lag before we get the music in, but it's pretty impressive. I wasn't going to show the first 30 seconds, but actually I think we might as well sit and enjoy and give you guys a bit of a break. The 2-minute video. Let's have a look. Is it?
And this is Matt's solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's my dream.
It's your.
Here's the audio. Here's the audio coming through.
Did you make this video, Matt?
I made this video, yeah. I started making videos during the lockdown to try to give myself a new skill set, and made
Nice.
a few encouragement ones, and then did this. I didn't make the music, I borrowed it, sorry. Yeah, I kind of wonder if we should be relying on the government to provide this messaging. What happened for me in the past was I asked the government for some law changes, and they were kind of a little bit freaky about it. So I just created the law changes, developed a code of practice, instigated them under common law, published them, did a public consultation on them, and then said, here, I've done the consultation, here's the law. You can either go with it or create something better. And that kind of made them create the Psychoactive Substances Act. So I think we need to do something similar here.
I agree. Totally agree. And you've had that experience, so I think you might be the man for the job.
Yeah, okay. Yep. How are we going on the video? I can keep talking. I'm actually pulling together academics from this field who want to work together as a collaborative team to look at all the data that's out there on vitamin D, zinc, and all these other things, and just do a really solid review.
Sorry.
So instead of me saying it, we can have something which is peer-reviewed, just a solid review of what the different cofactors are, and look for other biomarkers as well. And then we can have some more
Sorry, we lost
official
the audio
information
again.
the government put out. No, we've lost it.
That's pretty cool. So what you're saying with this is that, oh, there you go, there's a dance party. So we can, I know for events, so what you're proposing is just like you show your COVID pass, you can another option is also to show your immunity
Or a negative result, or.
Well, you could technically have a third option, which is my bio scores out of 5 major markers are above 7. So I'm just as good as someone with vaccine, or I'm just as good as someone with the negative tests.
I think that's what it is, isn't it? Isn't it, Matt? Isn't
That's
that,
exactly, you get it, Andrew. That's exactly it. You've got it. It's yep. Once you really think about it, it's pretty clear. This is what we should do.
Well, for me, that just makes complete logical sense, because isn't the whole point of it, you can't do this and that and the other because you're not vaccinated, but if you're vaccinated you can still catch COVID and can still spread it. So
we have individual differences.
Not to be too crude to put a point on it, but like people go down to the viaducts, catch up with somebody that night. What risk are you putting yourself at with many parts of your health? So, but why are we not exploring this as okay, well, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, but I can do this in my own way and prove that I'm safe and healthy.
Exactly.
Why is that not part of the condition? And why do I have to stand at the door of the Hollywood Theatre and tell you, no, you can't come in, because there's no other option under the law, which is being rushed into legislation today? It's just astounding that it's the reality where we're at.
Yeah, I think providing a negative COVID test would make way more sense.
And I can tell you, just going back to the viaduct, do you remember when we worked at Velvet? I was amazed when working in a bar, people were standing like a meter. I could literally feel their breath, or sometimes I could feel their spit fly onto me. So and yes, some people with the vaccine will have great immunity. Not everyone will. And then even if it was just a mixed everyone, I think this is a great option that Matt's producing, because it actually says, you actually get to read your biomarkers at that moment in time and go, this is where my health is at. I'm not going to be a risk to the community nor myself, and go out and truly feel safe.
But the other key thing about that, what Matt was saying about getting a blood test, for example, is imagine what else could be picked up that people don't know that they've got.
So we can actually develop something called a microfluidic cell flow chip, which is a little piece of plastic that you prick your finger on, and then the blood goes down a whole lot of different streams, and it's different little chips, and one of them might have some spike protein on to work out what happens when spike protein touches your blood. Another one might tell you vitamin D levels. Another one might look for your antibodies to see whether you got your antibodies from injection or infection. If there's antibodies there, there's antibodies there. So we could put all of that. We could give that out to people, and then we could make another one, which is a paid version, which also checks to see if you've got some cancer on the way, or if you've got something wrong with your liver. We could have clinics that do all that, franchise all over the place, problem solve, export it to the world, bring some money back in. Bang,
so how are you going on making that happen? Where are you at from concept to because that sounds like this could be this, not just even outside of COVID, this is what humanity needs. This is, and I believe medicine have known this, but I'm sorry, I'm of the believer that actually not everyone, like I say, but a lot of medicine keep and definitely big pharma, they're there to keep people sick, to keep funding the industry. But outside of that, this is just gold. So how is it happening? How can we go from listening and getting excited about it to seeing it happen?
Well, last time I had an idea, it was let's replace the alcohol industry with something safer. And I found out that what happens when you do that is that they talk to the government talks to all these, next minute, all your money's disappeared and people are trying to put you in jail for just made up stuff, and you have to go and hide somewhere. So I spent 5 years in Thailand bankrupt, just sort of chilling out and trying to cope with the trauma. So I'm not sure if I want to take on the pharmaceutical industry. But I think we need to find a way to incorporate them as a stakeholder or something. See, with the alcohol, if I'd said, why don't we sell this product to the liquor guys so they can make the money out of it, then they wouldn't have had to take me out, So we need to kind of find a way to make it work for industry and work for government and work for the public. Otherwise, you just get mowed,
Andrew, you're...
So where am I?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, carry on. So where am I at?
So for me, it's let's network together with academics. A lot of them are terrified that they're going to suddenly get squirted with a super high dose of COVID and die. Like the politicians who said with their country, they're not going ahead with the vaccine. All of them are suddenly died. You know what I mean? And so, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I do want to stay alive. So I think we pull together academics who want to work together and want to contribute, and we develop a standard.
It's going to cost money though, right?
Yeah, so do we bring in venture capital and make it a profit thing? Or as long as possible, I want to keep this as the not-for-profit. So this is being something which is done by the people for the people. And not too sure if we can stay incorporated in society or if society is getting broken into two groups, the vaxxed and the natural healthers, let's call them. Yeah, I don't know.
I like
Let's
that.
have a list up.
Well, no, but
anyway.
there's a lot of natural healthers within the vaxxed as well. Like
true.
it's, there are a lot of people that are. I mean, don't forget we're in a society also where we up until now have a lot of us are vaxxed. Like I prior to COVID, were you fully immunized?
Mm-hmm.
I'm fully immunized. Is it is anyone here not fully immunized under the national schedule under the other than COVID?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's a very common, normal thing. And I think that if there were more alternatives, and I think that after 2023, we might have more people, interested. I really think this hesitancy, a lot of it is really because of the way it's been politically shoved down our throat, with the absence of alternative options that are very clearly there being broadcast all around the world, as well as, what was the other thing? Oh, I can't remember. But anyway, it's like, I think that a lot of people could be interested in this.
And I think the other key thing is, it's like Aston, as a parent with DJ Corvette, that, with kids, if you tell them to do something, they probably sometimes won't, just because you're telling them to do it. Whereas if you say, would you like chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream? They'll have ice cream, but they feel like they've got choice. And I think that's the key thing, that the moment we're not being given any alternative, it's like, stay in your house, stay in Auckland. It's like, I've had 3 trips to go to Gisborne and to Christchurch and to Raglan, all cancelled because I can't leave the city. Because why? Yeah. I've complied with all the rules that I was supposed to comply with. And even when you told me to eat only the chocolate ice cream, I still cannot go and see my, my extended family outside of the city. So
that's a good point.
I think it's the idea of, you talk about this pro-choice point of view, but alternatively, there is no other choice. It's like, get vaccinated or you don't get to do anything. And that is actually choice in disguise. That's not true. And I think we all just got tied up in this political PR swing of everything. And to Matt's point, imagine, Matt, if I said to you, we'll get the government to give you $1 million, right, out of the $1 billion they spend every week. What could you do with those academics and that information and communication plan and all the things with $1 million? I guarantee you'd be able to do a crap load of stuff.
Okay, for the first $20,000, I'm going to pay academics to do a solid literature review that's going to go right into the methodologies of every study that's been done on the vitamin D, zinc, and other biomarkers that pop up. So that's going to happen. We're going to develop a standard and publish the standard. Next, we're going to develop an app, which is going to cost about between $50,000 and $80,000, which is going to be a minimum viable product app, which is going to take your results if you get a blood test and put them onto a database that you can see you can show your employer with a QR code, and another app for people that can scan it. So employers, workplaces, events, supermarkets, Tinder dates, whatever, can scan it and go, oh yeah, your transmission risk is about 10%. You are as safe as the person that's been doubly injected. You can come in, or it's going to scan and say, so that would be that the first 100,000 would get that up and running. And then the next sort of 100,000 will be to make that really, really secure as a blockchain app. And then we'll do a study. I think we're going to do a study then of all of the hospitals that we can reach around the world that have had big COVID outbreaks and have a look at their blood data libraries and just screen for all the other biomarkers. That's what I do. And then I develop that into the microfluidic flow chip. I think I'm up to about...
well, you've got...
Maybe I'm up to $500,000. Next $500,000, we're going to set up a franchise for outlets and clinics that you can walk into a clinic and get your test done. And then if you pay, that's free. And if you pay extra, we can also tell you what's wrong with your body and how to fix it. And we're going to hire the doctors that have lost their jobs to retrain and do this. Is that good? $1 million, I could do that, I reckon.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing. Well, anyone that wants to fund it
Andrew,
out
got
there.
any idea? Do you reckon, Mr. Communications Extraordinaire, do you reckon you could convince
some
the
funding?
government to give him $1 million?
I think Matt and I need to take this conversation offline and have a further discussion around how I can help him with that, because that sounds like a pretty good plan.
That's exactly why I got you guys on together, because when I heard it, I was like, oh, if there's someone that should listen to Matt, it's Andrew. I wonder if the government doesn't come to the party, what about like private corporations, because their work must be affected and then they can make a buck out of it.
Well, no, as Ben said, I mean, there are investment organisations and angel investors and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, let's. I think we should have a little chat.
Okay.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, good plan.
I've just got one question, just coming back to address to both you guys, but probably maybe more Matt. And this affects Aston and many people that I know that have children, about them now allowing 12-year-olds, is that right, to be able to have the choice to go and get the vaccine, don't have to ask their parents.
My son told me that he wants to go get vaccinated afterwards, despite both of his parents not taking it due to medical reasons, and I literally, my heart's my heart is breaking. I can't do anything once he turns 12, and I've literally just begged him, going, darling, because the other thing is I am nervous about shedding, because I don't know if it's true, but I don't want to put my body at any risk. My condition is like the condition that is the main side effect, or a very common side effect of pretty much every vaccine. It's what supposedly I heard one scientist say it's what the CDC predicted was going to be the main side effect of the COVID vaccines, but it didn't turn out to be the case. But there's safety signals in every country, including ours. On our August the 15th data, the safety signal came up for this. And, and on top of that, I don't think he needs it. Like, why if children are so resilient to it, and he's on medication every day, that is the treatment for it. Like,
well, my concern is mental health and bullying. I have a concern that if you're the kid at school that hasn't got vaccinated and then you're bullied, then you can literally just go, okay, I'm going to go and get it, and walk down and go and get it because you're being bullied, not because you actually know what it's about.
Just because he's of age to receive it, according to
he's
medical,
not yet. No, thank you.
Yeah. So, but legally, from a medical point of view, as a parent, he can't do it without your consent, and the doctors can't administer it without your consent. But
they're saying to us that they can, and that schools are.
No, but it's like a written, if you had the flu jab, for example, that kids can get flu jab at school, but parents have got to sign a consent form. You can't do anything to a child or put anything in their body without their parents' consent until they're of age. So although they're saying he's valid at that age to receive it, doesn't mean that he can do it without your consent.
Because look, he's fully vaccinated up until now, by the national schedule. Like, we're not anti-vax in that sense, but I just am like, yeah, it's scary. This one scares me.
So that's good. I'm glad to hear that. But that's still, I just worry on the mental health part. Yeah, if he comes home crying every day, I'm being bullied, Mum. Like, and his main reason is, because all my friends have got it, I want to have it. And in the parents' mental health, just mental health in general is a concern for me about all of this.
Well, maybe we should do a show on that. In fact, next week, we can talk about that more next week, because we are coming up to an hour, and next week we have got two parents on. So this would actually be a better conversation to have with the two parents. But Matt, you're a parent.
I am.
Yeah. How does, are you nervous about children getting into that age where they can consent and make their own decisions?
I have two teenagers, 14 and 17 years old, and I had concern because they understand my beliefs about possible toxicity issues, but also they know that my beliefs are a little bit different to all the other kids' parents' beliefs at school anyway. No one else had to go leave the country and hide in Thailand for 5 years in their class, so they pissed the government off. So, but I had to tell them, hey, listen, guys, you're at the age now where the bit where daddy tells you what to do all the time is kind of finished, and you're kind of making your own decisions. And I've got to support you in your decisions. So particularly with this, it's your decision. The government's told us that, but let's make a deal that if you do this, I'm not going to get angry. Just come and tell me about it, because I need to know in case it makes you sick afterwards, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the concern for me, is that if you're, don't get the right thing, and then they get to school, and of course there's an age where kids stop looking at the parent as the primary kind of role model and sole source of truth, and they start looking at the peers. It's really important that humans do that. They look at peers for feedback. And so if all the other kids are doing it, they might well do it. And they need to know that it's going to be okay to tell mum or dad afterwards, just in case they get sick or there's a whole lot more bleeding than normal. They're not scared to tell you, so that you can do something about it. Take them to the doctor so that a doctor can say, it's got nothing to do with the vaccine, has it? No, kids always start bleeding like that, don't they? What the hell's wrong with you? You know what I mean? So
See, my thing is that, like, what if he goes and does it, and then it's like, how, you know, I have to care for him if something goes wrong, and it sheds onto me. And then if this neurological, I mean, to put into perspective, on some days I really struggle to care for him anyway, and I don't even have COVID or the vaccine in my system. So it's like, yeah, it's just a scary thought. And like, if anyone's wondering what on earth this condition is, I've had Guillain-Barré, and I've had basically neurological conditions since I was in primary school, and Guillain-Barré syndrome. I think I've got a long-term chronic version of it, but I'm seeing a neurologist. That's another story in itself. It's going to take, I'm going to have to go through like a good year or so of tests, because COVID's slowing everything down, and they can't, stimulate my immune system my nervous system too much. But some days, my hands and my legs, like I'm just literally like a vegetable going with like an electrical storm of like it's raining sparks down my spine and throughout my body, and yeah, my nervous system just shuts down and I lose function. So I just like, if he gets sick and brings it home, it's like I can't care for him if it gets to me and triggers me, and this condition gets triggered not just obviously by COVID, which I haven't been exposed to, but get many bugs, many viruses. I got the Guillain-Barré after a Campylobacter, or just a bug. So yeah, like that, when you were saying, Andrew, your body responds to viruses in one particular way, this is my body's response is crippling neuropathy. So that's what I'm scared about. I'm happy to become a second-rate citizen. I'm happy to surrender my rights in society, to go to the gym and the hairdresser, to go to a shop, and to go dine out. But that scares me.
But I think the key thing is like my condition came on. Well, encephalitis I got because I got chicken pox from my goddaughter who gave it to me, and mum thought I'd had it enough, and then I got strep throat when I was 27, and they didn't swab my throat, and it built up, and I collapsed on Waiheke Island, and then my body just went, this is shit, and turned it into something else. So the bodies work in different ways, but I don't say that my body may have been better or worse with the vaccine, but I think the point is that there's got to be an alternative to this way that we're dealing with this vaccination certificate, to everything that Matt's talked about. Why is there, what is it that there is not another option? Like, I'm just scared. I'll give Matt $1 million, and he's come up with an answer that's smarter than I've heard from any person in our government since, by the way, we're just going to bring in some stuff from Pfizer. There's got to be an alternative to either vaccinate or don't. But if you don't, these are the ways to protect and support yourself, and also validate, and that's the problem, validate yourself to go to the gym, to go to the hairdresser, that everyone feels safe. And because the problem is that all those people are fearful because the government have made us feel like if you're not vaccinated, you're a dangerous person. No, that's not true, actually, because again, to Matt's point, I could be vaccinated, but I could still be as high risk as an unvaccinated person of transmitting it to someone in the supermarket or the hairdresser. So it's just, I find it annoying and frustrating that there isn't an alternative, which is why, yes, I'd like to have a chat with you, Matt, because I think you're pretty clever.
Wouldn't that be exciting if you guys make some action happen?
That would be cool.
Matt, by the way, it's raining here and we are a little bit east of you, so oh, look,
Be
it's
warned.
still sunny there.
Be
It's,
warned,
we
it's
are
on
like
its
we are
way.
10 minutes
Right on
east.
there.
We are actually all very close. Or Andrew's in the city, but
Well, Avondale's
But yeah.
not the city, but
so
that's
I
good.
know. Well,
Good
no, I was watching TV on Monday night when it was really, really raining, and they had that murder cold case thing, and it's the house across the road from me. And so
Gosh.
I'm looking from the TV, like staring out the window, going, that Canal Road house is that house. So
Oh my gosh.
it was, really, really spooky. So it's kind of the city. We consider it central unless you go across to Newland, but yeah, that's pretty much central.
I would have never classed it as a city.
awesome.
Well, yeah, thank
Wow.
you.
Oh, sorry, terrible vision switching I've done. Like, I'm sitting there on the wrong person. I'm trying to manage it all together. That's all right. I'll get there. It's our own
My
show. We
video work
don't have
is
a
fine.
boss firing us.
Yeah. I'll get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the chatting today. We're just over an hour, so I think it's a really good time, and I really hope something comes of it. And Matt, yeah, if there's anything I can help in any way, I do have a science degree and years of postgrad research and research. Actually, I was doing pharmacology and toxicology at Auckland Med School when you were doing your party pill days, and when I was doing chemistry and stuff, and you were one of my heroes back then. I thought it was great, and so yeah, and I'm a filmmaker and all that jazz with a master's. I actually left my master's. I went to start a master's in pharmacology, got my had my research and had my supervisor and everything, and then I decided to just it was the big pharma. It pushed me away, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And so I went to film, did a master's in film, and so yeah, if you anything that you need, any support that I can offer to help make that happen, and I'm so glad that you guys have connected, and Andrew's excited and wants to help make that happen too, and yeah, definitely keep you posted, and we'll definitely get you back on the show as well with those other guests. My stepmom, they actually make the penny cooks. They make local vitamin C and vitamin D and MSM products, and I've been taking them and absolutely love them. So we'll try and tee up a show, assuming they're going to want to come on the show, and with you guys together, because I think it'd be great. Imagine we can have a whole show about vitamin D. So
Yeah, get the vitamin D message out there. You know, it's a real key, I think.
And maybe that's something we can do actually, is just really, maybe instead of all this whole, like, let's start a political movement. Seth, do you mind closing this door here, please? It's getting really loud. A political movement about taking down the government. Let's try and maybe do a more positive psychology approach and just start to rally people together to start working on their health and building a more nutritionally and immunologically resilient nation.
I think to Matt's point, and again, I'll talk to you about this, Matt, when we catch up, but with my 6 years of fighting the government, with them spending tens of millions of dollars to prove a point that I said was wrong, I think we're kindred spirits in that approach, that it's really, we need to make it like it's their idea by showing
Communication
there's already a problem and we've already got the solution. So just quietly behind the scenes, let us help you, is something that I think I've got a bit of experience with from that.
That's a good angle.
Okay, yeah. Keenan, let's do that. That's great. Yeah. It's not about criticizing them or telling them they've got it wrong. It's just about saying, well,
have you looked at this option?
kind of thing. Yeah.
Let's do it different.
Well, we look forward to having the update catch up maybe in a couple of months, or seeing where it goes. I mean, everything could be, who knows, the goalposts keep changing, so everything might be back to normal by then, who knows. But just thank you so much for your time today, guys. It's been really informative and interesting, and having the different viewpoints. So yeah, thank you so
I
much.
don't know if the Facebook, I couldn't find it on Facebook. It's hard to control and see the Facebook, but the YouTube, I can see the YouTube live, and we have had viewers this whole time, so you can push that out through YouTube. And if anyone is sitting here watching this, please like and subscribe to our social medias at the bottom, particularly the YouTube channel. We want to try and we're just starting to work on this YouTube channel and trying to get 100
We need 10
followers
more
so we can
people.
get our URL and don't have to post that hideous URL.
Yeah, we need 10 more people so we can have 100 subscribers.
So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and everyone else out there watching this, please stay safe. Please keep your vitamin D levels up, take some zinc, lower your stress levels, do some meditation, live a happy, healthy life, and
Focus on the positives.
alleviate the fear. And if it does get too hard, remember, actually, there's no COVID in your home. If you're in a space on your own, I suppose I can't say that, but if it does get too much from watching all the news and all the propaganda, if you tune out and just focus on your immediate reality, usually you'll find that there's not much to fear about there. So have a good day, everyone. All right.
Thanks for having us on the show, guys. Thank you so
All right.
much, and really cool meeting you, Andrew. Cheers.
Yeah, you too, Matt. Ngā mihi. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.